Thank you. Russ, I threw that in this last second, if that's okay. Want to wake you guys up this morning. How we doing? Huh? I know 700 people could be so quiet. I love it. Alyssa, thanks for the intro. I wondered how long it would take for the Cyclone fans to get loud today. Let's just do a quick round of cheers. Where are my Hawkeyes at? Come on. Come on, it's okay. You know we were going to win every game by 2 and not score. We did that for a long time. Okay, Cyclones, have your moment. Where are you guys at? I figured that'd be a little bit more aggressive. That was a big one. Now, please don't screw this up for us. Usually you beat us and go 7-5. We go 10-2, and then that loss kills us. So if you do something good, we'll actually cheer for you this time, Cyclones. Come on, please do that. And I was told in the back that we have some Huskers in here too. They're just everywhere. So before I get into my story, I do have to say, when I was growing up in Mount Vernon, that's the biggest deal was obviously the Huskers. 2 hours south, and always wanted to go there. They were really good in the 90s. If you didn't hear that, talk to a Husker fan today, they'll remind you how good they were in the 90s. But I go down there on an unofficial visit. I walk in. They played the Buffaloes, or Colorado Buffs that day, and great game. No, do we have Buffaloes in here too? I look, one, couple. And I go down there, and Solwich was the coach at the time, and he had this, I didn't realize he had such a southern drawl. He's like, well, son, it looks like you could walk on to the University of Nebraska. I'm like, well, my folks are broke. We're farmers, so that's not going to happen. And the next week, Iowa offered me a scholarship, and I'm like, I'll take the free one. So we're going to go over there. So thank you for that. As a true farmer, that's what I did, take the free one. Yeah. You guys have your clients, right? So it's an honor to be here. It's always great to be back in the state of Iowa. Live in the Twin Cities now, and I love getting back and talking to the great folks. I know we have a group that's kind of from all over, Midwest, Southwest. Excited to talk to you guys and just tell a little bit about my story and how the heck I got to where I got to. Growing up in a small town, is I think the most simple way to put it was we lived by some codes, some principles that just live true. And I think when I grew up, you didn't realize how important these very simple things are that you live by in a small town, on the farm with our family farm, that we just were simple to us, but ring true as an adult, ring true as a professional athlete, ring true as a dad now. And it was the best advice I ever got from my dad when I left Mount Vernon and went to Iowa City and left for college, the big city of Iowa City. It was never forget where you came from. It meant something very basic at the time when I left at 18. He's like, never forget where you came from. Yeah, I know. I mean, never gonna be a small town kid. But it was the principles that were embedded in that. It was the farming background. It was the hard work. It was the selflessness. All the things that I had that I didn't know were such advantages when I became an adult. Treat people right. Man, is that simple, right? So that sheet in front of you, I brought that and wanted to print that off because it's something that, the same thing I tell my kids. I have a 17 and 14-year-old, 9 and 7 as well, but the older two specifically talk about writing things down to constantly remind yourself of things you need to either improve on, things you're good at, and things you need to make better. So as I talk about my principles, write some things down that are principles of yours. Things that you think about that may become natural to you that you were born with, good, bad, whatever that is, and think about them, write them down, and then live by those or improve those things. Treat people right, such a simple thing. But when you really think about when you're going through your day-to-day, right, especially in your worlds, that one bad conversation, that one bad moment can lead to a bunch of bad things, or that one simple gesture of holding a door, shaking a hand, helping somebody out, man, does that go a long ways. And when you do that over and over, it just builds equity and builds equity in yourself. The reason I sound like this right now today was we had our family foundation event last night at Manny's downtown Minneapolis. Who's been there? Manny's, come on, that place is incredible. So I might have had a couple bourbons and got home about 11 last night. And we get home and you look at the impact you make of the people in those rooms raising money for the families that we've impacted over the course of the last 16 years of our foundation. And you realize that I'm out of football now for 7 years, but when you treat people right, you shake their hand, you look them in the eye, and you do what you say, and you have integrity, That goes a long ways, whether you're dealing with business folks, whether you're dealing with individuals, or whether you're dealing with a family that's got a child in the hospital that's going through something. And relationships are everything. Everything. I think about this now with my 17-year-old. Who has a 17-year-old daughter in the house? That's fun. That's a good time, isn't it? She talked to me once a couple weeks ago. Yeah. It was like one word. It was like, I thought that was only the boys did that. Yeah, it's actually worse. Like now she loves mom, or like 3 years ago she loved dad. They say she comes back around. But building relationships, like my marriage, 18 years, it's a constant, everyday relationship build. Ups, downs, ebbs, flows, but they're everything. You have to work on them. Friendships, long-term friendships, relationships are the fabric of life. That's my dad. We lost him in 2014, way, way, way too young. But he taught me so much. That's my hero, my mentor, and I didn't realize how lucky I was until you lose him, of course. And growing up in a small family farm, as Alyssa mentioned in the intro, I had such an advantage that I didn't realize until I left. And I teach this to my kids now. Like, I live in town, I live in Twin Cities on the lake, and I, everything, the kids have nothing that really they do on a day-to-day basis that really matters. Hey, take the garbage out, clean your room, right? Put the dishes away. This stuff all matters in the scheme of things. Like, I'm gonna give you an instruction, you're gonna do it, you're gonna listen. Great, we're doing that. You accomplish that. But it's really more about them. It's about their sports, it's about their activities. Growing up on a farm and having a dad and mom that work so hard on the farm, I got value by being that 12-year-old kid that had to go fix that quarter-mile stretch of fence so we could move the cows there tomorrow. And if it didn't get done right, where it's 5 barbs, evenly spaced, tight, posts were straight, had to be done a certain way, otherwise we had to start over and do it right. That was a 12-year-old kid that had to say, my mom said, hey, go over to Schultz's, here's all the supplies, and get it done. I can't look around and be like, hey, Dad, what about this? Hey, Mom, this. They're doing something. They're doing other stuff to get things ready for tomorrow. I had to figure that out myself. And if I didn't do it right, the business couldn't move forward. We couldn't move the cattle over there. We couldn't eventually get those calves bigger. We couldn't sell them. It was something bigger than yourself. I had chores that mattered. Doing things that didn't directly benefit you, but something greater, the farm. Pressure test your marriage. This is the best one that I learned now as an adult being married, is when I watched my folks argue over when we should sell corn because of prices, right? And then, you guys have heard that story. Got bills to pay. Should we sell the corn now? Should we wait for the prices to go up? And they fight, and then at night they make up, and they're married, and they live this great life of business, owners, the struggle of farming, and the best part of their marriage. And you see that by living on that farm and growing up in that environment. And I think the best part that ended up serving me the best as an adult in my professional life, in my college life, and my sports teams were play your role. Any hog farmers in here? Who grew up in a hog farm? You poor saps. Same. We sold about 6,000 pigs a year. We started with dry lot hogs, so cleaning out, mucking the pens, hauling feed, and eventually we put up a confinement barn. That was a really big investment for our folks back in the 90s to put up that confinement barn. And you saw the investment, the stress, the worry about doing it. So every time we go load those pigs, we knew that check was coming. We could pay the bills, we could keep moving forward. And you learn about when you're in a pig barn loading pigs, the best part about it was I could swear one place on the farm, in the pig barn. Growing up, that was special, because you learned some really good words in there. Some creative things. You're just like, yeah, I didn't know that was even a word. And as soon as you walked out of the pig barn, no swearing anymore, but you got that one moment. But you learn the value of when you show up for a job. I was the guy who had to be in the alleyway. Thing was 2 feet wide, 280-pound hogs that we're loading, 184 to fit on that semi. I counted every one of those suckers, so I knew we were getting close to being done. And in South Dakota, the only guarantee is the wind's gonna blow, it's gonna be cold, and when that pig gets to the end of the chute or end of the alley, he's gonna hit that little wind, he's gonna flip around, he's gonna come right back at old Chad. That 280-pounder's coming. So I learned how to dip down, grab the nose, push him over, flip him, but don't damage or bruise him, for the love of God. We don't like that when we take him to market. But the point was, that was my role. I did end up having 1,400 NFL career tackles, so I think it did work out for me long term. But But that was my role. I played my role. It was important. My parents had theirs. My sisters had theirs. The help would come in. My buddies from high school would come in and help. They had theirs. And you learn the value of just doing your job repetitively so the team can function, so the pigs can get loaded, so the family farm can move forward. This is where I grew up. Whipped a lot of shitties on that main street. If you know, you know. I don't know what our obsession was with stealing pumpkins around Halloween and throwing them on Main Street too. Got away with some good stuff on there. But the point of this is when you grow up in a small town, and many of us did in all parts of the country, you take something with you that's just a little bit different. That connection, that relationship where the bad news is going to beat you home. Mom's going to find out everything. Right? We didn't have cell phones then. It still beat us home somehow. But the part for me was so exciting was I had that town that had my back all the way through my career. But that came with some expectations. That came with this idea that if I make a mistake, I let myself down, I let my family down, I let that town down, all 400 people. And then being from South Dakota, you let the state down. Because there's not that many of us that leave and go play Division I football and go on to play professional football. So every time I made a decision in the community, or if I'm going to go out and have a good time, or if how kind of dad am I going to be, what kind of husband am I going to be, how am I going to represent my name, my family, my team, my organization, whatever I am a part of, it matters. I want to make that town proud. And for those of you who know where Mitchell is, any colonels in here? Let's go. If you want a sneak peek at the Corn Palace, my Uncle Doug runs the Corn Palace now. Who's been to the Corn Palace? Same people been to Wall Drug, probably. Look at you. I love South Dakota. My Uncle Doug does run the Corn Palace, though, so some sweet backdoor. You can go look at some corn murals and see the inner workings of how they make it. It's really special stuff. So the reason I love this slide is how skinny my legs were on the picture on the right back in high school. They look like they don't even belong to my body. But I was a quarterback. I think Coach Ferentz missed the opportunity when he moved me to linebacker, but that's a whole other story. I made a lot more money. But that small town and that team on the picture on the left really tell my whole story. And the funny thing is as good as an individual can be, with me receiving an award, like look at me, the #1 speaker's rule is don't make it about yourself. So I put the picture of me receiving an award on there, trying to be subtle. But the point of that is Kyle Baker, Mike Werjeka, Dan Nebelsack, these kids behind here, I don't get any of the opportunities that I was provided. I don't get to go play at Iowa or play Division I football. I don't get to go on and have an 11-year NFL career, right, and do the things I was able to accomplish in the NFL, the me stuff without that team. And the reason is because that's the state championship game my senior year. We were able to win that with the 7 seniors we had go out for football that year that I went to kindergarten with. And one former Iowa Hawkeye watched that game, called Coach Ferentz, and said, hey, have you seen this kid? And he's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Plays 9-man football in South Dakota. He's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. They reach out. I dubbed a bunch of VHS tape, spent the 2 weeks putting that highlight tape together. You know what I'm talking about. That's how old you guys are too. And they came and checked me out. None of that happens without a great team. You can be as good as you want to be as an individual, and that football is the ultimate team game. All 11, you got to do your job. In this instance, if I don't have that team that gets us to that state championship game, I don't get the opportunity because I don't ever get seen by that one guy. The value of team is really, really important. And the value of that culture of that team matters the most. Those same kids we ran the overpass with to prepare all of June and July for football. Kyle Baker, number 99, I threw watermelons and pumpkins for his family farm every summer for 10 years. He would come help us load pigs. Those relationships, what built that team and made it great to allow us to win that state championship, which allowed me to go do the things I was able to do. Teams matter, culture matters, and being one of that team and doing your job matters the most. So after doing some great stuff in high school, I got noticed. As I told you, I got the scholarship offer. And I had been part of this great community that was really protective and wanted me to succeed. And I was the only Division I football recruit in the state of South Dakota that year. And I get to go to Iowa. not knowing, all the joking aside about, who we cheer for and on every Saturday, and not knowing how lucky I was to have Coach Ferentz, be walking into Coach Ferentz's office, get that opportunity to realize that how special of a man and opportunity that was going to be for me. Truly another father figure that I still get nervous talking to him today because I want to make him so proud. And I think when you have leaders like that you get to go play for, that embody the things that they talk about, the things that they say, and then they do those things every day and you see them, having that strong leadership really matters. And this is the first time really in my life that we started talking about leadership at Iowa. It's all about leadership. How are we gonna enter the weight room? What time are we gonna get there? How are we gonna act when we're in there? Everything we did was team-based. Everything we did was culture-based. I live in the Twin Cities, so we have PJ Fleck, and we have Gophers in here, right? Yeah? What does PJ Fleck say? Yell it out. Row the boat. Right? Row the boat. We had Break the Rock. And everything he did, when you have this motto, you have this thing that embodies the culture of your team, your organization, what you do, and you just live by that daily, every morning lift, every morning speed and conditioning, every practice, you break down every drill with it. It just becomes the fabric of who you are. Because at the end of the day, when I walked onto campus in Iowa, we were not very talented, at least on the surface. If you looked at the paper and looked at our recruiting stars and the rankings, we were not very good. Dallas Clark was a nobody recruit. Chad Greenway was a nobody recruit. Robert Gallery, nobody wanted. These guys went on to have long careers in the NFL, become All-Americans, do amazing things, right? But they were recruited as nobodies. But they came in and opened the doors to this leadership environment and this culture that was built on, guess what? We're gonna show up every day and we're gonna go hard. And we're gonna weed out those weak ones that can't hang day after day after day. And they'd fall aside for different reasons. They didn't want it, they weren't committed, they made mistakes, they had issues in the community. They fall apart, they find their way out. But at the end of the day, when culture wins, you have to weed out those folks that just don't want to row the boat. They don't want to take that 1,000th swing at that rock and break that rock, knowing that the other 999 got you there. And when you're put in this environment where you're pressure testing people all the time, where you're constantly around good people turning into great people, and leaders are around sort of watching this thing take shape, leaders emerge, people surface. And I didn't realize how important, this was the first time I started to realize how important the farm was, how important that selflessness was of loading pigs and doing your job and knowing your role. Because when I was put in this pressure tested environment, I just wanted to do it more and more and more. And I realized that being that low recruit, being really scared and quite honestly fearful of going to Iowa because I didn't know if I could make it, if I was good enough. The reality was on day one, I was like, okay, I can hang with these guys. We're doing a conditioning test. I can remember it like it was yesterday. Conditioning test, weight room test. I'm like, all right, I'm with these guys. I'm just like them. Day 10, I'm getting stronger and more emboldened. By day 100, I'm starting to see that I'm actually rising above some of these guys that were the bigger recruits. Now they're my teammates, right? But they're also my competition. So by a year, 365 days in, you realize, you look around and be like, you know what? Not only am I going to be here, I'm going to be one of these leaders that are going to emerge and kind of take it to the next level. And you do that by just showing up every day. Sometimes I think throughout my career, and you're going to hear me echo this throughout the speech, sometimes my best ability, and I think what would be very true in the NFL, was availability. I kept showing up, and when I showed up, the coaches, the GM, my position coach knew that if I showed up, when I showed up, you knew what you're going to get every time. And to be that, you may not be the greatest, the most athletic, the fastest, right? The smartest, whatever field you're in, whatever you're doing that day, you may not be the best at that, but if you continue to show up every day, put your best foot forward, it's easy to say, hard to do. And just keep doing it. Impose our will was our biggest message coming out on the defensive side at Iowa. And that was because we collectively were going to be really, really simple. We were not going to make mistakes, and we were going to make you make mistakes. And us collectively, we're just going to overwhelm you. Hold up your end, and then make them proud. And that embodied my experience in Iowa. To be named an all-time captain when I left, after all the other things, individual things, that was the one individual thing that I'm most proud of. Because you're pressure tested in that environment with so many great people around you that every day show up and do the best things. Right? Abdul Hajj, one of my college teammates and one of my best friends, grew up in Lauderhill in Fort Lauderdale, completely separate upbringings, but we had one thing in common is we wanted to go hard against each other all the time. We just wanted to sharpen each other, so every day we were preparing and banging and going, speed, strength, whatever that was. And when you're around those folks and you just have your head down and just working without that long-term intention, long-term goal, because that goal of the NFL, that goal of reaching your goals and the end, if you look at the end, right, you're gonna miss everything right in front of you. If you look at the one day right today, this one rep, this one moment, and just go as hard as I can, next one as hard as I can. Pretty soon you look around after a couple years like, okay, we got pretty good. You didn't even know it because you're just working and you're focused. So this is a great photo. My wife has no idea this photo is involved in this slide. There'll be no pictures taken of this slide or shared on social media. So to find humility, one must truly be humiliated. And I really believe that. And I had a lesson that Coach Ferentz taught me in college that I never forgot, never will forget. And it happened after all the things I just told you about becoming an emerging leader, walking into campus and being scared and earning the right, eventually get on the field and play and start and become a leader of this team and this program that I was so scared to be jumping into. We're playing Ohio State in 2004. We lose the football game. There can't be any Buckeye fans in here. They don't exist, do they? They're not even real people. They're like robots. Ohio State fans in here? There's not. Oh, there's one. Gosh. They show up sometimes. He's probably not even here for the sales conference. Just walking down the street. It's like, let's pop in here and be an annoying Ohio State fan. Let me guess, 10 wins again this year, 11 wins. I'm joking. But we're in Ohio State, literally an impossible place to go play. It really is. It's one of the most imposing stadiums I've ever played in. Fan base is obviously crazy. They have all this talent. We go there, we lose, 19-10, I believe the score was. And defensively, we played a really good football game. We gave up a score, our offense gave up a score, our special teams gave us some bad field position, but we played good defensively. And a reporter comes up to me after the game, and they're like, what more could you guys have done? Defensively, you guys played your heart out, poured heart and soul into this thing, and I'm this dumb sophomore kid. I'm just like, you know what? I don't know what else we could have done. Defense played lights out. Offense can't make these mistakes. Special teams can't give up field position. I'm just pointing fingers everywhere, right, except here. And I have this quote, and I say these things, and the best part about football, and we'll get into that here in a second, is there's accountability, right? And the next day, every time you play, you win, lose, whatever happens, you always go watch the film the next day with your team, with your defense, with your linebackers. It kind of breaks down that way. The first thing, you guys are the team, I'm Coach Ferentz, 2 big screens up here. The first thing that gets put on that screen is my quote. I'm a leader, I'm a captain, right? I've showed up on campus since day one and just done my job and worked hard and had my head down. And I was humiliated. And then what happened next, Coach Ferentz put on the next 10, 15 plays, whatever it was, of areas where I made mistakes. I missed tackles. I missed communication. Right? I didn't spill the football to my middle linebacker so we could make the play. Mistakes I made that happen in every football game that's ever been played. You're never going to play a perfect football game. Mistakes are made. But in this moment, could you have done more? Yeah, you could have done more. Just like in your own lives, you always know when you're cutting that corner. You always know when you make a mistake. And then all of a sudden, when you come up and be like, no, I couldn't have done more, right? Offense made this mistake. Special teams did this, right? No, I could have done more. I could have found ways to improve. I could have found ways to make a play to win that football game for our team. Defensively, we could have played better. Humiliated. All that work was lost. That trust that was built up with your team, with your coaches, that consistency showing up, it just goes away in a moment. And that's the really crappy part about that, right? Is you can build up all this equity day after day after day after day, doing the right thing, and then that one moment, one mistake, you lose so much of that. So as a professional, you have to think about these things. I got to learn that as a kid in college that was in a protected environment to say, you know what? It's a mistake. You're a young kid. You walk in that locker room and trust has to be regained, but it happens pretty quickly to a bunch of 19 to 22-year-olds. They forget quick. And those same coaches that I looked up to when I walked into campus, I look at that day and just disappointment, right? And it's like my job now to go rebuild that. And the only way to do that is to keep showing up. There's no magic thing, you can just flip that. So as a professional, you have to understand is the things you say, the things you do, the ownership and accountability you take in yourself really, really matter. And that self-talk inside your head of like, you know what, every time after that moment, I'm doing an interview, you better believe what I think about. Don't make that mistake again. Don't make it about yourself. I'm not sure what my hair was doing this time in my life. But I was in college, and you're making mistakes. It is what it is. So to get really into the meat of this thing, I become a pro in 2006. I get drafted to the Minnesota Vikings. There we go. That's what I'm talking about. Did not know how lucky I was to be able to stay in this upper Midwest, South Dakota, Iowa to Minnesota. My wife on draft day, she was just saying, anywhere south of Iowa. She's from Chicago, so she just hates cold, right? Anywhere south of Iowa. 14th pick, 15th pick. 952 number pops up. We had no idea what 952 was at the time. I'm on the family farm with friends and family on my Trio cell phone. You know that call dropped. The NFL calls and the call drops because you're in the middle of nowhere in South Dakota. Story as old as time. So they call the farm phone, has the long curly Q, pigtail cord. I grab it, go sit in the lazy boy, and take the call from the 952 number. And my wife's like, she's asking my marketing guy, like, what's 952? He's a huge Vikings fan. He's like, that's Minnesota. And she's like, what? There's like 4 teams north of Iowa. But get drafted in Minnesota. It was an incredible experience to be able to have that draft day on that farm with my family friends, my high school friends. All those guys are in that photo from our high school days. To have that moment, to realize my mentality of leaving that small town and going to Iowa City, and the fear I had to realize I look back and be like, holy cow, how did I get here? And it wasn't because I was so talented or so athletic or so this or so that, but it was when I went to Iowa and I just bought into what they were dishing out. I bought into that culture, and they just carved me up and made me who I was able to be, the best version of myself at 22 years old. Get drafted to the Vikings, and here's the reason why that going to Minnesota was the best. I look good in purple is the first reason, but the second reason is then we started having kids. We had our first child the next year, and Grandma and Grandpa can drive across the border 4.5 hours and see the family. Didn't think about that one as a kid. As an adult with as an adult now with children and having 2 and then 3 and then 4, realizing that I was so close to my family, my friends in Iowa that could drive up and support and be a part of this amazing experience, not being across the country, was an amazing, amazing lucky thing for me to be. And they get drafted to an organization where the first thing, they get a bad rap, back up a second. In 2005, before I got drafted, who knows about the Lake Minnetonka boat issue the Vikings had? I live on that lake. Those same boats now go by and do these cruises every day. I'm like, that must have been the boat that they had the little boat party on. So I was the Midwest kid, the all shucks South Dakota boy that we're going to clean up this character. We're going to bring him in 2006. So that was me. So being a good guy actually can benefit you in the long run. But what you realize is when you go there is I had to identify as a pro, things are different. I get drafted. The first press conference I have, I'm not in Mount Vernon anymore. I'm not in Iowa City. It's like, how soon are you going to play? How fast can we turn this thing around? How fast can this defense get better? Here's the stats from last year. What are you going to do to improve that? And you realize real quickly that you're now a pro. And if you're not going to get the job done, somebody else is going to come in and do it for you. Probably cheaper, right? So it changes your mentality of like, oh boy, like that pressure to perform is now real because now it's my job and they can take it away from me. You always had that when you're in high school and college, but not at this level. You don't understand that your job could literally be ripped from you and pretty soon you're selling insurance and financial services. Horrible feeling. But the one thing that was able to keep me was that wife I talk about that I met in college, Jenny. She ran track and cross country at Iowa from Joliet, Illinois. And, well, she would say Shorewood. Joliet has a bad rap. But that was the one reason that I was able to have success in the NFL, her and her alone. And then we started having our kid. Madden is now 17. We had her in our first year in the NFL. You identified your purpose. And when you identify your purpose and you know what you're going to work for and you know what the focus is, it simplifies everything you have to go do and decide whether you're at work, personally, professionally, whatever it is you have going on. It just helps you focus and identify, like, this is my why. Those girls are my why. Had Madden in 07, Beckett in 10, 14, 16. So throughout my entire career, they were always right there. Everything I did, every decision I made, publicly and privately, was about them. Me going to work, because that's what it was work for me. It wasn't who I was. Getting caught up in the celebrity of being in the NFL and being on that stage and being leveled up for really no reason other than the fact that we really like football in this country, she kept me grounded. Good game, bad game, it was take the garbage out. Good game, bad game, get the kids to school. We have a concert. It's things that you guys do every day that you focus on, but when you have a purpose that's driven and not about yourself, because I saw so many teammates that came in, it was just all about them. Their career, their individual goals, which you have to have that, but you don't have that greater purpose, it doesn't mean quite as much, and that focus is lost. And I think the biggest thing that determines is your motives determine your outcome. When you know your purpose, right, your motivations, they're going to determine your outcome. I have a couple of good examples. Adam Thielen on the left. Adam grew up in Detroit Lakes, Minnesota, small town kid, had no scholarship offers coming out of high school. Went to Minnesota State Mankato, played for the Mavs on a $500 scholarship that he got, I don't know how. He goes to have a great Division II career. He goes to this thing called the Call of the Wild weekend, where you call anybody who played D2 and D1 football who isn't drafted or isn't taken as a free agent, undrafted free agent, and you come in for a workout. I've never seen somebody get signed out of that weekend except for Adam. Adam gets signed out of that weekend, goes to rookie minicamp, makes it through that weekend, goes to the full team minicamp, makes it through that weekend, goes to training camp, gets cut, gets put on practice squad. Adam, when you get to know him, his motivation was, at every turn, I'm going to prove that I'm good enough. And not for you or you or you, but for me. I'm going to prove to myself that when I show up and do the right things and go hard every day and come to practice with a great mentality, team first, it's going to work out. It's team first. It's the opportunity, and I'm just going to grind and grind and grind. He makes it eventually onto the roster. He gets an opportunity in his third year. Stephon Diggs, who was our starting receiver, gets injured in the game. He gets called up, and the whole team was crazy for him. Because we had seen the work he put in. We were at those practices when nobody else was watching. We know the toil. We know all the extra effort. We know all the extra time after practice. We know how good he is. He just needed that one opportunity. And his motives were so pure. We were so happy for him because we knew that it wasn't about how much money he could make or that next contract. It was that he was going to prove to himself that he could make it. And there he is out there catching footballs. Still playing this day for the Carolina Panthers after, 12, 13 years. And he hasn't changed a bit. Great husband, great dad, raising a great family, because his motivations were always pure. Percy Harvin, an incredible talent. Went to the University of Florida, grew up in Virginia. This guy was one of the best teammates you could have. If you're in the locker room, this guy would run through a wall for you. He's on the top 5 of my Mount Rushmore for guys that were just like physical freaks coming to the NFL. So when you're in the NFL for a couple of years, you start to see things, you're like, I've never seen that before. Like Brett Favre, I heard Brett throw a football in 2009 when he came to the Vikings. I heard him throw the football. I was like, what was that? That's new. Receivers are coming back, like, okay, that's next level arm strength at 40. Steve Hutchinson, Hall of Fame guard, incredible player, top 5. Klein Saucer. Any North Dakotans in here? Jim Klein Saucer. Yes. Freak. Adrian, freak. Percy, freak. This guy was like the Tesla before they came out. First 10 yards was incredible. And the thing that was hard to discern for Percy was what were his motivations? Because if I'm talking to Percy from a captain down to a rookie or second-year guy, he would run through any wall for the team to go make a play. He loved the guys. But his motivations always funneled towards those financial things. Like it's all about that next contract. They have to get me the ball. I need the ball more so I can make more plays so I can get money faster. And I had several conversations with Percy to help him understand that, like, we have to get you the ball. Be patient. Stay within the offense. If you go run up to the top and start complaining to ownership, to GM, to head coach, to position coach, and it's this constant divisive battle because you want the ball more, and it's about you, right? Those things become really impossible to deal with. In a world where everybody's got a strong ego and everybody wants the ball more and everybody wants to play more and everybody wants to win more and everybody wants more money. If you keep your motives pure, it's like, hey, listen, I'm going to do whatever I can for the team because guess what, Percy, you're really good. We're going to get you the ball. But he couldn't get over the fact that ownership and GM and head coach weren't listening. And he wanted it more and he wanted it quicker. And eventually we sell him off, goes to Seattle. He wins the Super Bowl, sweet for him, but he's out of the league. Year or two later, 6 or 7 year career to a guy who should be a first ballot Hall of Famer. His motives, at the end of the day, even though he was a great teammate, a good friend, his motives, his long-term goals, that inner conversation he's having with himself is always about those financial goals and get to that first, and it's about me, and that determined his outcome. So you think through yourself as a professional, he's like, well, what is my purpose and what really moves me? Is it always about making the next dollar? Is it about building relationships? Is it about chasing 4 or 5 or 6 more clients and can I do more, or is it about taking care of the ones you already have that are solid? Think about those things because when you talk about getting yourself better as a business owner, it's about building relationships. It's about people. It's about your motivations. Because at the end of the day, that'll get you to your goal faster. What do you bring to the table? As a professional athlete, you have these certain intangibles, these minimums you have to have, right? You have to be a certain size. They measure you up, and in front of NFL owners, all 32 of them, your underwear at the NFL Combine just looking like this, all frumpy, right? At least I was. I'm sure other guys weren't looking frumpy. And they're measuring you. They're looking at you. They're testing how fast you can run. How strong are you? Like, what do you bring to the table? So for me, like, what do I really have that separates me? And sometimes it wasn't the physical gifts at all that was my separator. I wasn't one of the all-time freaks. What do you bring to the table on a day-to-day basis that maybe separates you in your professional life, in your personal life? What do you do well? But most importantly, what do you not do well? And are you willing to look at yourself and be like, I can do better at that. I can stop cutting that corner. But right now our focus is our tools. What do we bring? These things really, these two things right here, really take no talent, right? Being a reliable person takes no talent. Being a consistent person takes no talent. Bringing an attitude, an effort, an enthusiastic spirit to everything you do doesn't take talent. But it's a separator at every level of sport, every level of business. How do you approach a meeting? How do you approach something? Maybe you don't really want to do it, but you know what? You're going to bring that energy. That 6 a.m. lift, week 15 in the NFL, you're miserable. And you show up with a little bit of bounce in your step, you throw on some old hillbilly country music, and you walk into the weight room, and you get the guys going. And you find a way to bring some juice. Because they're looking for that leader. They're looking for that somebody to hold on to bring along. That enthusiasm is infectious. It takes no talent. It's a decision you get to make no matter how hard things are. And how hard are you really trying every day from an effort standpoint? I do this self-evaluation all the time. Could I have done better? Could I have done more? It just comes from the spirit of always watching film and breaking people down. My kids' games, I'm going to like a 9-year-old soccer game. I'm like, well, let's watch them warm up. I got to see number 32 is pretty quick, good left foot, all right. And my wife's like, calm down. Just trying to break them down. Look at them, where are the weaknesses? And then how do you work? So we've identified some of our tools we have, what we do, what we embody, what makes us up. Now, how do we show up? Jason Kelsey gave a great speech on persistence, on the ability to self-talk and keep showing up and put yourself in a position just to determine your outcome without any regard for anybody else's opinion. That's work. That's showing up saying, you know what, I'm going to choose my end game. Staying after and getting extra reps, showing up early, my persistence will overcome any weakness or any failure that I have. And that persistence to constantly push for more is going to be the thing that separates you. That attitude you're going to have, that enthusiasm, your ability to give everything, that's how you work and how you approach things. Because I know right now, if you're actually listening, you can think about things that you cut every day that you shouldn't. You probably told yourself, hey, I'm going to work out tomorrow morning. How many skipped that one? I did. Me and you. Yeah, others are like. So when you tell yourself you're going to do something, like, do you really do it? Do you cut that corner? Do you take a misstep? And then do you identify it to yourself that you did that? Or do you just let that go and that becomes who you are? Because in the world I was living in, if you do that, and all of a sudden you show up for work and all of a sudden you're not improving the things that you're not very good at, you're gone. You have to understand the things that you do well and you don't do well. Because this is inevitable. The bloody nose, I mean. Failure is inevitable. You should be striving for it. So finding that fine line as a linebacker of, can I take that gap? I've seen it on film. I've heard the play call. I know what they're going to do before it's going to happen. The running back's a little bit deeper. I see the guard's a little light. I know he's going to pull. I can see it all happen right in front of me. Am I going to take that risk and shoot that gap? I'm still going to spill the ball to my middle linebacker, so I'm going to do my job. I can make the play here. Do I take that risk? You take it. You don't make it. You failed. You screwed up. Thankfully, your buddy cleans you up on the other side. You show up to film the next day in the accountability session, and you say, hey, that's on me. And then you add it to your toolbox. You turn it into another tool in your tool belt that you can say, you know what, I learned, I touched the hot stove, I'm not going to do that one again. But if you're not constantly seeking failure in some parts of your professional life, because you're just taking it a step too far, you're not sure yet, you haven't tried that yet, maybe it's starting a business, doing something on your own, right? Taking that, you guys do that every day in here. So seek out failure in your life. And I mean that in the best way possible. Because if you don't know, you're going to have that regret. I'm really happy I shot that gap back in 2004 and took that risk and beat the Gophers in the last second. Shot at the Gophers quick. But the key is you have to understand, why did you fail? Where was the failure? Was it physical? Was it mental in the football sports world? Right? Was I not prepared well enough? Did I miss that tackle? Well, how can I impact that? How can I improve it? I can show up and work harder. I can stay after. I can go find that blocking, tackling instead and spend some more time on it. I can ask a teammate to stay after because I want to see something. I can ask a coach to say, hey, what are you seeing that I'm not seeing? How do I improve? Accountability. This is the breath of life in the NFL. This is the breath of life to everything in business, is holding yourself accountable first. This is required by good teams, good companies, and good individuals to have this self-talk and self-conversation about, are you holding yourself accountable? Because when I was watching film, we did a thing called tracking loafs. It was a loaf tracker on defense, and we did it on every level of my career. And what you would do is you would watch every single play from practice, every single play from the game, the coaches would, and they would track loafs. You could be on the backside of a play, the run's away from me, and if I wasn't full speed from the moment I got out of my shuffle into a sprint, loaf. The moment. He's like, I've seen you on film too much. I know you're half-assing it back there. Be like, yeah, that's on me, coach. Absolutely. Loaf. Bang. We track these things in a team setting. We would know who the loafers were. It's accountability. Steve's got 30 loafs. Whatever it is, right? And when you track those things and you visibly see it, it makes the team stronger because you live in that world of like, I'm not holding up my end, but the team's going to hold me accountable to that. And they're going to remind me. They're going to remind me in the huddle, in practice, say, hey, don't get caught in the backside. Because guess what? You take those 2 slow steps in your sprint, That guy misses the tackle, and now he's running down the sidelines. And because you didn't give the effort at the beginning, they score. Because you weren't willing to give everything you had in that one moment because we were just going to find a way to cut that little bit of a corner that ended up impacting our entire team. But if we're not talking about those 2 slow steps and holding him accountable, we don't identify it before it becomes a problem. Now, we've identified it in practice. Now in a game, he doesn't take those 2 slow steps. He's bursting. He makes that tackle for a 10-yard gain. They get a first down, but we live on. We get another shot. That fine line is the difference in your professional, personal life. That fine line, that 1-inch difference, can be the difference. So seek out areas where you can improve. And every team I've been a part of, the best part was it was a trickle down from the top. So leaders in the room, bosses in the room, it starts with you. If you're constantly doing this, right, like me in that interview, placing blame and not looking here first, you're building a culture that doesn't involve themselves in the accountability process. But if you're a coach, head coach, specifically in the NFL world or college world, says, hey, you weren't prepared enough. We could have done this different and that different. We could have had you more prepared, had you a better situation. That's on us. Now it builds a culture of a team that says, hey, you know what? He can own his mistakes. I can certainly own mine. And then that accountability, that culture, that team is easily identifiable. And then the best part about that is as soon as that film goes on and there's that one guy who gets called out by the coach and he tries to place blame and everybody's like, what? Like, really? You've been outed. That's how you find a fraud. It's somebody who's not willing to hold up their end. Somebody who's not willing to own the stuff that they have right in front of them. Because guess what? We got the same scouting report you got. We knew that look. We went over that look during practice. You either didn't care enough about your team to listen, to go make that play, right? Or it was a physical error, and you got to own that either way. But either way, you got to own it. And you got to turn over those rocks and find those folks that don't fit the culture. And that might be, this is the best line I have, right? As my 17-year-old, you're going to turn into the 5 people you hang out with the most. That is so, so, so true. And I look back at my life and realize how lucky I was to have these people kind of skirt out of my life, or these people come into my life. And you call it luck, but you also kind of have to realize that you're identifying these people based off of your wants and needs and who you want to be around with. And do you really care about self-improvement and growth, or do you just talk about it? Because if you really care about it, you'd be seeking out those folks that are maybe just a step above you or a little bit better than you. Sometimes they're younger. You look at them and be like, hey, they're doing something. I'm going to get a little closer to this person, maybe start asking some questions, bring them into my circle, take them out for coffee and say, hey, what are you doing that I can learn from? Because you don't have it all figured out. My wife told me that a long time ago. Be your harshest critic. No yes men. Adrian, I got to play with Adrian Peterson for 10 years in the NFL. Just an incredible specimen. You could be like, hey, Adrian, I bet you can't do 30 pull-ups. He'd be like, watch. Like, who does 30 pull-ups in a row? Honestly, think about that. He goes over and just goes, bang, bang, bang. 31, 32. And you're like, what? You touch him, it's like touching granite. You're like, well, I wasn't born like that, so you can take all the credit you want for working hard, but I'm pretty sure you just came out that way, so yeah, congrats. Genetics. But the thing he didn't have, he had too many people around him saying, yes, you're amazing. Yes, you're the best running back to ever play. Yes, yes. Where are the no guys at? Where are the guys telling him that he can't catch a ball for the life of him? All those muscles just trying to catch that thing. He couldn't block or understand protections at the level that he needed to. So for 10 years, you can imagine I get real mouthy on the football field, real mouthy. And with Adrian, I would just talk this all the time, constantly. Because I realized when I met his family, I met all the folks who are around him, right? The coaches, how they treated him, and I realized that this dude needs somebody to tell him he's not good at something. Because I've seen him, right? He's an unbelievable player. He's way better than me. Immediate Hall of Famer. But he didn't have anybody telling him, like, dude, you got to stay after practice and catch these footballs because you suck at that. It's just the truth. You're still going to go down as one of the best ones ever, but how much better could you be? But he wasn't aware, he lacked self-awareness because everybody kept telling him how amazing he was all the time. And sometimes it's hard for somebody to be at that level to look back and be like, you know what, he's right. I catch like a robot. I could beat him in block protection all the time. He'd try to take a block on me, I'd boom, swim, under, give him a little power and a little move. There's no way in the world this 9-man kid from South Dakota should beat Adrian Peterson in a blocking drill. But he lacked the want to do it. So I just yap. Talk, remind him, let him know. Right? Then I'd tell his coach, you better coach him up. Building this, I was probably being a jerk sometimes. He gave it back to me, trust me. But the thing was, he knew in the back of his mind that he had to improve. And then all of a sudden I'd watch him. He'd stay after. He'd ask questions. And he slowly improved and got better. He never got to the level where I think he could have, because he had too many people around telling him how amazing he was. But he did buy into the fact that he could find ways to improve it at another level. The one thing for me is I always knew, I had a great mom who kept me really in line with self-awareness and how crappy I was at something. I mean that in the best positive way, the most positive way. Because she gave me the tools to understand that I'm not awesome at everything, and that's okay, but it's gonna help me be a much better person than I could have been. My wife's another great example of that. You can pat yourself on the back all you want, right? But the reality is you have to know the stuff you're not very good at, and the stuff you are good at, you have to work on every day to be better. So I would know, meet with coach, here's the things you have to work on. And you do that from goal setting. So who's right now is currently setting goals in their professional world? For themselves, for their team, for their family. You have to understand where you're at. Write those things down, just like a pros and cons list. What am I good at? What am I okay at? What am I crappy at? What are my goals to improve myself this year? You have to write them down. And you have to keep them on your desk or someplace that you go to all the time and be like, keep that in mind. And you start to make marked improvements, celebrate those things. My wake-up call was my 9th year in the NFL. I had several of them, but that was the latest one in my career, professional career. Mike Zimmer gets hired. I had just finished the season before, had played 10 weeks with a broken wrist in 2 spots. Played through pain, did it for the team, right? Look at me, I'm so awesome because I did that. And I go to the offseason, they hire the new coach, they call me and say, hey, Chad, we think you make too much money, we want to take some of it. In the professional world, that means it's not really about the money, it's that you're not good enough anymore. We don't think you're valuable enough to pay you that money. Like, okay, that's a hard one to swallow. So my wife, the Italian from Chicago, is like, we're gonna burn everybody's house down. Where's the GM live? Where's the coach? He's probably gonna hit him first. Zimmer comes in, didn't know what he's getting himself into. But the reality was that was just a rash reaction, right? You've given 9 years to this organization. You have embodied what the Vikings were all about. You care about the Vikes. You care about the community. You have this foundation that gives back, but it's it's the NFL. It's professional football. It just doesn't matter, and sometime your time's gonna come. And they were reminding me of that, and that was a smack in the face and a wake-up call. And what I realized was this was an opportunity for me. So after we thought about it, I calmed her down. Just don't tell her to calm down. That then it makes it worse. That's the whole thing. Guys, oh, just calm down. Never mind. That was really a big mistake. But after we thought about it, we realized, you know what? Nobody's going to love us more than Minnesota. We're going to go to Jacksonville or New York or wherever and go play. It's like they don't really care about the 9th-year guy who's coming into their football team, because you're 30 years old. You're going to have a short shelf life. You're gone. No investment in the person. And I was so invested in the community, say, what, we're going to stay. And I was so motivated by the fact that they told me I wasn't good enough. I was gonna just go prove them wrong. Because my whole life I felt like I was the underdog, coming from the small town, going to Iowa. Even when I was a first-round pick, I just felt like that guy's like, I'm gonna go prove it again that I'm good enough. And maybe that was to myself, and maybe that was to my family, or maybe that was to my small town, right? Maybe that was to that state. But I just wanted to go prove them. And at that point, I had the best offseason of my life. Came back in the best shape. And Coach Zimmer was really fun to play for because he taught me so many things in my 9th year in the NFL that I had never thought I'd know. And after about 6 months, I'm like, this is fun football. I know more about football than I've ever known before, and I didn't realize how little I knew. So because I made that one decision, say, I'm not going to take myself too seriously. I'm not going to get so upset and so mad they asked me to take a pay cut or basically say you're not good enough, right? It was like, I'm going to go lean into this and see what happens and bet on myself. So I play years 9 and 10 to finish out my contract. The exact dollar amount, and I only talk about the financial part of this because it's just the way you do business in the NFL, right? It had nothing to do with the actual numbers. But Blair Walsh missed the kick left, 27-yard field goal. Remember that one? That was fun. Good thing it was -3 outside that day. We were playing outside. That was fun too. And I realized that wasn't going to be my last play. And I was not going to end on those terms. And I came back from my 11th year, and I signed for the exact dollar amount that they took from me the previous 2 years. I was like, nope, I want this number exactly. And the fact that I got to make that call and call my shot, I had known that I not only earned the respect of Coach Zimmer, re-earned the respect of that organization, but most importantly, taught myself that, you know what, when you buy into yourself and you don't take yourself too seriously and you reduce the ego and you throw it to the side and be like, you know what, it's not about me. It's about me proving to myself first that I can reinvent myself, reinvigorate myself, light a fire in my 9th year in the NFL. Some of you professionals looking back, you might be tired. Same monotonous thing. It's like, well, find a fire to light and go turn it around. Because when you bring that enthusiasm and energy, no matter where you're at, it just changes your whole perspective. And it took them just a little bit of pride to be like, you're not good enough. It's like, what? I have to prove this again. And I loved it. And the fact that I got to retire a Viking at the end of the day, making that decision and not jumping off and going someplace else, I got to retire a Viking after 11 years was the thing I'm the most proud of. After anything I've accomplished was the fact that I could start with an organization, finish with the same organization, be loyal, end it on my terms. I'm the most proud of anything I've accomplished other than obviously my family. So I appreciate you having me here today. It's an unbelievable room because I know everybody looking back at me is in this world of trying to seek out improvement, trying to find those little bit of advantages that can take their business, their personal life to the next level. When you're in a room like this, for me, stand up on stage, it's like being in front of the team because I know how much you guys look back and you're locked in. I can see the eyes. You're locked in. How can I take? What little piece can I take from this guy that I can take back to my office and take back to my personal life and just plug it in and find a way to improve? Because guess what? I don't have it all figured out, right? Clearly. But the reality is I know these mechanisms are built in place from my NFL career that I can lock into my life and say, okay, where do I got to clean things up? Where am I going off the path? Where can I find a way? So find your purpose. Identify your purpose. Why do you show up? Why do you go to work? Why are you youth coach? Why are you serving your community? Why do you care so much? What is your why? Identify it, write it down, talk about it, think about it. Talk about it with your team. What's your team culture look like? And purpose with a passion. Have a fire about it. Be consistent. Be the same person every day that you can be counted on. No matter who's looking back at you, that youth team you're coaching, those parents you're dealing with, the folks you work for on a daily basis, your family, be the same person every day they can count on. And sometimes that takes some sacrifice and hard decisions, and maybe another cup of coffee. Hold yourself accountable. Find new standards for yourself. And we found out we do that with failure, right? Find a new standard for yourself and keep pushing through. Because guess what? No matter how long you do it, you're never going to get there. But you need to constantly be seeking out a new rock to turn over, a new leaf to turn over, to find, right? Go educate yourself on something new that you've always wanted to do. Make yourself stronger. Be reliable. Be that person. When they say your name, right, what do people think about? Well, the big thing for us was when they say Chad Greenway, I just want them to think, oh, football player. Now everybody wants to talk about my daughter, Madden. Where's she going to go to college? Everybody knows her, basketball player, which is awesome, right? Not to be identified as a football player, but the one thing we wanted to be was a family that gave back to the community. So I talked about our foundation event last night. We want to hand that foundation off to our children that continues to impact the Twin Cities and the surrounding states, because we didn't want to just be known for football. Somebody who gives back, somebody who cares about something other than themselves. Be that person when they say your name. Love that one, right? I can't thank you guys enough. This has been a fun hour. It has been an hour. I really appreciate your attention. It's an honor for me to speak to a group like this. It truly is. and we still don't like the Husker fans in here. So thank you guys so much. Thanks for having me. I hope you guys have a great day.